The man waves his hand. A red thread suddenly appears. This red thread connects Li Dan and her senior together. The man turns to the nine-tailed fox and says, "This is what humans call destiny." The nine-tailed fox is instantly furious. He says, "If you provoke us foxes, we'll bite just like dogs." But this man is the mountain god who governs human matchmaking. He completely ignores the nine-tailed fox. He vanishes right before his eyes in an instant. This matchmaking thread is truly magical. The senior's bank card is suddenly frozen by his father. He has no choice but to go find his uncle who runs a bubble tea shop. He wants his uncle to help him out with some money. The uncle clearly doesn't want to give him money. Suddenly the uncle sees female customers staring at his handsome nephew. The uncle immediately puts a work uniform on his nephew. He says, "You want money, right? Fine, but first you have to work for me. I just happen to be hiring part-time staff." The senior has lived a privileged life since childhood. How could he agree to work? Suddenly the red thread on his hand is pulled taut. It turns out Li Dan has come to apply for the part-time job. The senior immediately tells his uncle earnestly that he must hire her. The uncle is experienced. He seems to understand something. At this moment, the nine-tailed fox is very worried. Could that red thread actually work? The female fox helps him analyze. Legend says that men and women tied by the red thread will form a good match no matter what. She asks why he's suddenly interested in the red thread. The nine-tailed fox says, "I'm only interested in severing the red thread." During a student dinner that evening, the senior caringly tells Li Dan to drink less. A female classmate nearby mistakenly thinks they're dating, but Li Dan blurts out, "I have a boyfriend." The senior feels dejected inside. He starts drinking non-stop, although the headache is severe. When he sees Li Dan about to leave, he still wants to walk her out. At this point, his head is hurting unbearably. Li Dan tells him to take care of himself, but just as she's about to leave, the red thread makes Li Dan stop in her tracks. She doesn't know why she suddenly wants to turn back and care for the senior. She asks if he needs her to call him a car, but the senior instinctively leans on her. Li Dan's heartbeat suddenly speeds up. The nine-tailed fox sees this scene from a distance. Li Dan calls a car for the senior. The senior takes the opportunity to hold Li Dan's hand and won't let go. The nine-tailed fox rushes over and pulls them apart. Then he helps close the car door for the senior. The message is clear: "You can leave now." Looking at the red thread on Li Dan's hand, the nine-tailed fox grows more and more worried. Li Dan sees through the nine-tailed fox's thoughts. She explains the senior just drank too much. She tells him not to overthink it. The nine-tailed fox says, "Don't worry, I'm not that petty." The next day, Li Dan starts working at the bubble tea shop. The nine-tailed fox calls her. He asks if she's tired. He says once he's done with things on his end, he'll come pick her up. But Li Dan sees the senior, who's become her co-worker. She quickly says it's not necessary. She can get home by herself. At this moment, the senior spills a drink. When Li Dan sees this, she immediately hangs up on the nine-tailed fox. She asks the senior if he's okay. The nine-tailed fox hears this. Soon, when the two get off work, the senior calls out to Li Dan. He asks if she wants him to walk her home. Li Dan says it's not necessary. The senior makes an excuse, saying he happens to have questions about the part-time job he wants to ask her. Li Dan says, "Then let's talk while we walk." The nine-tailed fox sees this scene from a distance. He feels uncomfortable inside. That evening, just as the nine-tailed fox is about to ask Li Dan about the part-time job, suddenly the power goes out at home. Li Dan is about to take a step forward, but accidentally trips. She bumps right into the nine-tailed fox. At this moment, the beet unexpectedly jumps out. Then it actually enters her mouth.